our info section, and so there's a lot of important information and time-sensitive stuff moving forward with that now.
Hello. So my updates are NSR stuff. So applications are now open. They're online on the SA website. So if you have anybody who asks you where they are, tell them to go to sa.rice.edu/NSR, and the application link is right there. I will also be sending out an email to senators and presidents tomorrow with information on the interview process and recording your selections and all of that. So if you have any questions, just wait till tomorrow. I'm sure they'll be answered then. Let's see. Other updates. Oh, the Discover Research thing was today. So here's a hand for our academics committee for putting that on. It went really well. It was well attended. So yeah, that's my updates.
Hey everyone, so what I've mainly been working on this summer is Hedgehopper, and Joan's going to talk about that next, but for now we have like a short order of business. Two of our senators will not be present for the entirety of the semester at Senate meetings for various class conflicts. So according to section 4B3E of the Constitution, the Senate may, by a 2/3 vote, grant a specific member temporary or permanent exemption from the attendance requirement in this section on the basis of a compelling reason for such an exemption. So I would consider a class conflict like their compelling reason. So we're going to go ahead and try to pass that by 2/3 vote. The first person is Nitin Agarwal. And he's actually here for the first 30 minutes, but from now on he'll have a class at that time. So, did you say all in favor?
Motion.
Yeah, go ahead. Second. All in favor? Hands. All opposed? Actually, none of the testing thing. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and pass the second person, Nikki Naik. So do I hear a motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Can I be added to that list? I'm a failure. I'm not from 6 to 9.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Motion. Second. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So just to be clear, these people will designate a proxy for each meeting, and that proxy will update them. So it's not like we're just like, okay, peace, we'll see you for the semester. So thank you.
Hey guys, so as Aretha just said, I've been working with her and Robbie over the summer on updating the Hedgehopper program. So as you all know, or if you don't know, it's meant to get people to explore local businesses and basically just all around the Rice community off campus. So some updates that we've made to the program are: one, we're no longer printing a physical Hedgehopper card that you need to show in order to receive the discount. Instead, it makes a lot more sense just to show your Rice ID. This way you don't lose your card really easily, and it just makes more sense. We've also updated it so that there's no membership fee for businesses to join. Since we're not printing the physical cards, there's no printing fee, so there's no need for businesses to pay. So this way more businesses want to join. And we've also changed the membership to on a rolling basis, so that instead of updating their contracts annually, just their contracts are renewed on a rolling basis unless they decide to opt out of it. So instead of having the physical card, which usually has a list of all the participants, we have a list on the SA website at sa.rice.edu/hedgehopper, and this will be updated continuously as rolling members are added. And last but not least, if you are a student at Rice and you refer a business who successfully joins the Hedgehopper program, we will give you a coffee house gift card. Woo! Yeah. Cool.
Cool. So the first order of business is the proposed legislation about the CUC ad drop proposal. So I guess to start off, I wanted Amrita to come up and kind of give an overview and background of what kind of the ad drop discussions have been around, and also some facts and data from the CUC survey that we worked on last semester. And so we're going to give Amrita around like 3 minutes. She was on the CUC last year. She's pretty well informed on these discussions. And then we'll go ahead and give Lewis, Mary, and Brian around 3 minutes to introduce their legislation, and then we'll have some time for debate, talk. One of the things I think that should be noted is I've kind of determined through different channels that this proposal that's kind of noted in this piece of legislation will not be placed on the Faculty Senate agenda this semester, and so all the stakeholders in Faculty Senate really want to hear from students. They want to hear what's a good kind of solution for these issues that have been identified. And they're really looking for us for guidance and kind of next steps. So hopefully coming out of this discussion, we'll have a better gauge of what the student opinion and student thoughts are on these issues. It's actually really incredibly complex issue, so it'll be an interesting discussion. But I think moving forward as well, it's going to be a topic that's going to need to be discussed at the colleges and in more depth over the coming weeks. But with that said, Amrita.
Hey guys, so as already said, I was on the CUC last year, and kind of what happened was we recognized a need for a change in terms of how students are having difficulty enrolling in certain classes that are in high demand. So recognizing that there are certain courses that have such high demand that students cannot register for maybe multiple semesters or a semester, the CUC wanted to research ad drop policy and research how students are dropping, when they're dropping, why. And we also sent out that student survey, I'm sure many of you got, in terms of transfer credit and all of that. So I kind of want to give you a few facts about the survey, because obviously the analysis was not available to the student body, but I think it's important for you guys to understand for the basis of this. So the response rate for the survey was 47%, and 41% of respondents said they dropped courses because their academic load was too high. 60% of respondents said that after the week 2 ad period, they had the schedules that they wanted for the spring of 2014. 55% of respondents said they have purposely registered for more credit hours than they wanted to take with the specific intention of dropping the course after the 2-week shopping period. Most respondents made their decision to drop the course after the first midterm, which is in most cases after the 2-week ad period. And when given a list of changes to the ad drop policy to allow for more students to enroll in high demand classes, the majority of students, 60%, chose for the option for a fixed number of late drops, similar to the pass-fail system. And so if you didn't take the survey, you're probably not aware of all the options, but this is just a synopsis of essentially all of the results. So given the fact that the Student Association wants to best represent the student body, and as what Robbie said, we'll now hear from Mary and Lewis and Brian from Duncan.
All right, so we have discussed this issue previously in this body, and last time we tabled it because there was no data, and we were being told that, the problem with registration and the reason we can't get classes is because students just sign up for too many classes and then they maliciously hold on to them even though they intend to drop them, and then they drop them. And it was originally the case that we were going to say, well, the Faculty Senate gave us 2 options, or the CUC gave us 2 options. One was a fine, and then the other one was a W on the transcript. And we said we don't want a W on the transcript. We would rather have a fine. But then we pointed out in this body that A, there's no data to prove that this problem exists, and B, why should we use the administration's 2 options rather than our own if we disagree with both of those options? Legislation was tabled, hasn't since been discussed here, and that was kind of how we got into having the CUC survey on this issue, was to collect data on it, and the data shows that what they're claiming exists is not really reflected in the data because they found that 44% of students have had some sort of problem getting into a course. But there's no information about why they actually had a problem and what they meant by that. So there's certainly no proof that students had a problem getting into the course for the specific reason that it was full at the ad deadline and some of the people in it were planning to drop it. There's a lot of causal claims that are being made from this data that the data don't actually support. And the resolution goes through a lot of that in detail. But when we discussed this at Duncan last spring, when we first found out from happening to glance at the faculty senate minutes that this was on the table, the opinion at Duncan was that this is ridiculous and there is no reason that all students should be penalized for the fact that the university has not kept up with the expansion of the student body in providing faculty, in providing sections of courses, in offering courses more frequently, and in otherwise making the registration system work by making there be enough space rather than by just blaming it all on the students. So what we are essentially asking in this resolution is for the Student Senate, as a representative of the student body, to definitively say that we don't agree with this proposal because it doesn't at all deal with the problem that they're claiming exists, and to say that, well, we'll discuss a solution to that problem, and we'll discuss a solution to registration problems in general, but the solution to registration problems is not to blame it on the students and do something that is going to have no overall impact, and the solution to this problem of people being in classes at the ad deadline, but planning to drop them, and those classes being full, which is the only situation in which those students are affecting any other student's ability to get into the class, needs a narrow solution that only addresses those students. Y'all want to add anything?
Is everyone clear what the proposal is?
What the CUC wants to do is it wants to say that we have an add deadline and a drop deadline, and between those deadlines is this special period in which you can drop 4 courses like we normally drop courses, and then the 5th course and later, and this is in your entire Rice career. The drop deadline changes after you've dropped 4 courses after the add deadline, and suddenly becomes a week 2 drop deadline, and you get a W for any further courses that you drop.
So just to clarify, over your 4 years at Rice, you can only have 4 drops before this starts taking effect.
And, you know, sure, there's a lot, some students do take more courses than they intend to actually complete. They take 18 credits and intend to drop down to 15, and they do so after the add deadline. So that's something that, yes, this proposal addresses, but it also addresses every other reason that you might drop a course. You might drop a course after week 2 because you don't realize until week 5 that the professor sucks, because week 1 is spent on the syllabus. Week 2, you may not even meet. If it's a Monday-only class, you probably have literally had 1 meeting of the course by the add deadline, because Labor Day usually falls on week 2.
And I would say, as someone who actually has a withdrawal on their transcript for like a legitimate reason, I understand that there's certain extenuating circumstances in which you would have one. I got bronchitis, couldn't go on a trip, dropped the course, have a W, completely understand. But I would say for other people who might not necessarily know how a course is, know the professor, I don't think they should necessarily be punished with a W on the transcript.
So what exactly does this legislation say? Does it just spell out opposition to their proposal, or does it counter-propose something else?
It does a few things. So it says, don't blame the problem on students. Students in paying full-time tuition are purchasing the right to enroll in 12 to 20 classes. So don't complain that we're enrolling in too many. 12 to 20 credits. It says the faculty senate should not pass the CUC's proposal, which, while it's not currently on the table, could be brought back onto the table at any point, really. So it makes sense for students to get on the record that we don't like this, because that reduces the likelihood that they'll bring it up again, and it gives, right at the moment the faculty senate starts discussing it, if they do bring it up again, student opinions on the record against it. Then it says that, you know, the broader registration issues are caused in large part by the lack of expansion of resources to meet the expansion of the student body. So that's probably a more productive place to look for a solution. And it also says that for the solution to the narrow issue of people being in classes that they intend to drop, we can potentially discuss a narrowly tailored solution. It gives an example, which is a fine that applies only if the class was full, and only if you don't petition examinations in standing to have it not apply because you're dropping for a legitimate reason other than you were just holding on to the class, or you have a financial inability to pay. But it's not saying that we actually endorse that. It's saying, here's an example of what we mean by a narrowly tailored solution to this issue.
Just to clarify, is the idea of having 4 courses drop and then having the 5th course be like a fine or a W, that's in the proposal, right? It's not already implemented, or is it already implemented?
It's not.
It is proposed, and we want that not to happen.
Okay.
Great, thanks guys. So we can go ahead and open up the floor to discussion at this point. I think really thinking about what's the solution to this type of problem, because that's something I and others can take back to the CSC and really see debate on between both students and faculty staff, because it is an issue that's not really just our say to decide. It's a complex process with faculty and administrators as well.
So this is something, I guess I'll start by saying that I agree with the opposition. Something in regards to the actual, this document itself. There were 2 things that I heard that I would maybe be wary of. The first is kind of the pointing fingers and saying, by the way, this is your fault. I just don't know how that's going to affect their reception of it. I guess I've never really communicated with the CUC, so I don't know how those communications are supposed to go. But I guess I would be a little worried of, kind of taking them off with that. And then the second one is in terms of saying this is an example solution, but this isn't what we're saying we should do. I think it would be stronger to come up with something that we would like to propose as a narrowly guided solution, like you're saying. Not something that we're saying this is an example, but something like let's do this instead. Because I just think that it sounds stronger to have put a lot of thought into coming up with something that we think is more valuable than what they're proposing.
My only concern with the opposition is the idea that the faculty we don't have enough resources or enough classes and sections, mostly because I know a lot of that is due to meeting space. There just isn't enough for the amount of students that we have currently. And this might end up being a long-term solution for a short, what they deem as a short-term problem. And so it might not actually come to fruition that they'll focus on it, because I think that they constantly focus on it with different buildings being built. I know the social science building has been promised to be built since my sophomore year, still not around. Been hoping and praying. But as a student who has no classes before 2 p.m. due to having small classes and no meeting spaces that can accommodate those, it's rough, but I don't think multiple sections would fix that.
I would actually just point to the sociology department as an example of a department where the problems in registration that the majors were experiencing were fixed. As soon as they decided to offer social theory, which is required every semester, there's really no longer any issue in getting into that class, whereas previously you had seniors who were in it because they couldn't get into it earlier. So I think with some departments, it's going to vary based on the department. So perhaps what we should be saying is that we need to look at what the other causes are, and it's really, the idea is to direct attention from how students go about the registration process, which is not likely to be the most significant issue here, to where there are issues in resources, and maybe space is one of those resources that we should add to the list of currently inadequate resources.
Yeah.
Because in some departments it certainly is faculty or sections offered. Like econ, are we really going to blame the students for the problems in econ?
Whereas in political science, where it comes to D2s, all intros are D2s, and so it's really difficult for potential poli-sci majors to get into those, even if there are multiple sections.
Any other thoughts? I guess so. I have kind of two personal opinions on this on two different points. So the first is looking at specifically the statement that says, like, as students we buy the right to take 12 to 20 credit hours. So I would very much hesitate to state that as strongly as it said. Certainly as students, like, we can take 12 to 20 credit hours, but I don't think the right to take up to 20 credit hours is part of the rights experience, right? You pay $50,000 a year not because, you know, I'm going to take 20 credit hours and that's, you know, what I came here to do, but it's because you bought access to this community, to this group of people, the professors you're taking classes from, the people who are sitting next to you. And so I think it would be a real disservice to really strongly state, you know, we're coming here just for 12 to 20 credit hours. I think the second one of looking at the number of professors and resources, sure, that's something we can always say, but it's not an efficient solution. Hiring a new faculty member is a few $1 million of investment, and if there's any way we can improve efficiency across the board, even if there is, you know, 5 people dropping out of the econ classes and closing those spots for others, that's 5 spots that we could have for potentially $0 instead of $5 million. And so I think obviously, you know, as students, we deserve the right to have more faculty, more staff, more courses, but it's also a question of efficiency, because this is something that if we come up with a solution for, could go into effect immediately and could open up those spots immediately.
Response to the first point is that I think it's a little bit more carefully worded in the resolution that the 12 to 20 credits thing doesn't come up as students have the right to do this, but that students should not be blamed for the registration problem on the basis of taking too many courses, because among the things they purchase with their tuition is the ability to enroll in that many courses. So that's like, it certainly doesn't advocate actually taking that many courses. And then with regard to the needing, you know, some sort of solution and anything that can help, sure. But the problem is that why are 5 more people dropping the class? Because if 5 more people are dropping the class for reasons we don't want them to drop the class, just because they're afraid that, you know, this is a class that they might take and they might stay in, but they're not totally sure yet, and they drop it. They think they might want to decide to drop it after the first exam, which people do not because they're deliberately enrolling in too many classes, but because they want to try something new. It will discourage people from trying something new for reasons other than the actual problem. Whereas if there's actually an issue with people being in classes and just holding on to them for the sake of holding on to them, then something that actually only hits those students, which we can do because it only applies to full classes, is going to make a lot more sense. Why should we penalize on the basis of people not being able to get into a class a student who drops a class that had 20 spaces in it at the ed deadline? That student didn't stop anyone from enrolling in that class because 20 more students could have enrolled in it.
I have a question on the CUC proposal as it pertains to freshmen whose drop deadline is later. So is there any kind of
Respond to that.
Okay,
So
yeah.
when we discussed the CUC proposal, they said that it would not affect freshmen. So in terms of the existing rules for freshmen, those would stay as they are, and the CUC would this drop policy would affect all those who are not first year.
So you have 4 drops once you start your sophomore year?
Assuming that you wear rights for 4 years. So it's 1 drop for every year that you're there, just like the pass-fail system. Yeah. So yeah, just to be clear, it's 4 drops if you're at Rice for 4 years. So say you graduate in 3, you get 3 drops.
But if you dropped, like, say, I'm an overzealous freshman and I take 21 hours or something, I just can't do 20.
Right.
And drop 2 classes, do those 2 go against your 4 drops then?
No, so when we talked about this, they were like, it's not going to apply to freshmen because we want them to still be able to do everything that they've done in the past. So that's a good clarification point.
Why would you get a drop for that year though if you couldn't use it?
So what she's saying, what I'm trying to say is that the late drop policy, this W or the poured late drops, if you drop your freshman year, it doesn't, as long as you're within the time period, it doesn't count against this policy.
So it's not a late drop if you drop before the drop deadline. That's just CUC administrative crap that they've come up with as a loaded term to try to convince us that this is a problem. It's not late to drop before a deadline. You just dropped the class.
So to clarify, the freshmen would still be able to drop until the last day of courses, and that wouldn't be, they would not change the drop deadline for freshmen. They would only change it for every other,
Would it be
student who's on
counted
first
as a
year.
drop after the ad deadline but before the drop deadline?
If the drop deadline was at 2 weeks. So if the drop deadline's at 2 weeks, any drop after that is considered late.
That's not true because the drop deadline is not at 2 weeks.
If,
All right. Let's move on to the next point. I think one thing that should be clear is we're not in opposition to the, we're working with administrators, working with faculty. Like, this isn't something where they're trying to screw us over. Like, we work with faculty, we work with staff. That's an important role of how the university is governed. And this happens across the nation. So I think it's a really slippery slope to go down if we start pointing fingers like that. Let's go ahead with.
Is there any way to like maybe designate a course as like high stakes, or this is a class that people always want to get into and it has trouble, maybe like an intro psych course? Because I do agree that like, I don't think necessarily we should be punishing, okay, the students should be in any way like penalized for dropping a course that maybe isn't full, like, in any other circumstance. If somebody wants to sign up for insect biology, that's not going to be, that's not going to be full. It's not like high demand. But maybe over the course of your time at Bryce, you can only, maybe this would only like qualify for like a certain, number of courses. You might get maybe 4 high stakes courses that you can drop after a certain week.
I think what people object to, like what I object to, is this idea of a very serious end consequence for dropping a course, like a W withdrawal. And I think the core idea there is you want to disincentivize people, especially those with malicious intent, from dropping late. But I think you can achieve that without kind of having this very bad end consequence, with just making the process to drop a course really hard, but ending in the same result. So making it a very convoluted process, I agree this almost seems counterintuitive, but I think if people were kind of shopping around or had malicious intent, they'd be very much less likely to do that if they knew they had to print out a special form, go to the professor of that class, get their signature to drop it, and then manually take that form to the registrar, even though the end consequences are the same of you don't get a W, it just is what it is, you drop the course, all is on you. Or I think fewer people would be willing to game the system if they had to go through that process to do what they want to do.
So since no one, as far as I can tell, has raised up anything in support of this, can we just establish our current opinion of this exact version of this proposal? Just do that.
Sorry, are you asking for like a straw poll?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, of the voting members of the Senate here, who would be in support of the four drops in your time period rise, and then W's past that? Anybody in favor? All those opposed?
Okay, so are we opposing to have more discussion? Or?
No, sorry, so this is just a straw poll. So we can't vote on any legislation for 2 weeks, so we introduce a piece of legislation and there's a two-week waiting period until we can actually vote on it and pass it. But I think what I was just asking is, just a quick straw poll of is there general support or
For the CUC proposal?
for the CUC proposal, yeah.
And I think what Jasmine and you guys are doing is really great about really thinking about ways you can actually come up with like a counter proposal for what can we do. Because when we were in discussions with the CUC, to be honest, they were like, we are hoping to do some action, but what they wanted to do with the survey was with the other result, they wanted to see, hey, can students come up with a better disincentive? Because if they can, then we'll do it, And just like Robbie's saying, they really weren't like malicious or anything like that. And not that I'm saying anyone thinks that, but I think it'd be really great if we could come up with like a creative solution to this, that students for the most part, would support. And so maybe what I would encourage you guys to do in the next 2 weeks, or, just kind of think about, hey, what could we do instead of this? What could we do instead of a W or 4 late drops and so on? And actually the 4 late drops came from a student's proposal, right? Because they were like, well, I don't want a W, so maybe here's another thing. So if you guys could think of something, you really would entertain it.
Going off, what's your name?
Enrica.
Amrita, yeah, I think what you said, like as far as collaboration between like the students and the faculty, I think that's what we should be doing. So I think like your idea is great. And I think that like the faculty, I don't think they have any, malicious intent or, faculty student wants to like point fingers back at us. Like, we don't want to do that, we don't have time for that. So I really do think that we should probably, think about ways to come up with a better solution that we all agree with.
My question with this is, so please do a bunch of research on this, put out a survey, but how, so they got a different students that they should limit it to 4, but I don't see someone who repeatedly attempts to take courses and then drop them at the last minute, really doing that. So like a normal person would do it 4 times. I don't see somebody with malicious intent doing it 4 times. That once a year is really seem like enough time to allow someone to drop the course. So I don't know how they got there, would be willing to make this number larger?
Yeah, so I think anything's on the table at this point. So that's a good suggestion.
How long do we think we have until faculty senate will put this back on the table? Did you say a semester or a year or?
So my current understanding of what's going on is that there are multiple issues from different places. I can't be more specific because there's like a lot of politics involved, but there's a lot of issues with this proposal, one of which is obviously student opposition. And so I've been told that this proposal will not be going on the September 3rd agenda or on the agenda this semester to the best of people's knowledge. What is happening is that the registrar is conducting like a daily snapshot study. So for every day at 9 a.m., they're going to like pull every single like course. It's like a snapshot, so it's pulling like every single course registration, and so they'll be able to have like a better temporal picture of when are people dropping and potentially why are people dropping. And so there's that kind of large data set we generated last semester in the joint CUC SA OIE survey, and in addition to that, I think really what they wanted to do is talk over potential solutions and put different things on the table over the rest of the semester, but I think really there's not really any crystal clear timetable for action.
I just want to say to those thinking of possible solutions, I would highly recommend that you think about making the solution, if possible, very simple, because you have to understand like a lot of people are going to be potentially going through this process, and things like pass-fail, while they might seem like really easy to understand for those of us who have gone through them and who maybe are in later years, for new students, you're coming in and you're learning all these new things. If this is another thing you have to learn and it's like a really convoluted thing, like you have to have like, these requirements have to be in effect for you to drop this course, or it won't go to this like certain number. Like, just make it in a way that's easy to understand and not something that's going to stress new students coming in.
I mean, I wouldn't cut down a solution that will benefit the student body because it's hard to teach freshmen. Freshmen already learn too much during OE. I don't think adding one thing is going to destroy their experience. If we can find a solution that really kind of helps this problem, then we'll teach it to freshmen. We'll get it done.
Were other solutions discussed by the CUC before the proposals?
Sorry, say that one more time.
Were other proposals discussed by the CUC before the original proposals?
So, you mean like in past years, did they discuss this?
No, like before you.
Were there alternative solutions other to
It doesn't make sense
the
like come up with solutions.
Okay, so you mean in terms of like the 4 pass-fail deadline, 4 late drops and things like that?
Right, yeah.
Okay, So in terms of what we really entertained in the committee, they said the $75 late fee for dropping, and that was just an arbitrary set amount. But the reason why we didn't want to do that, or in terms of why the committee felt that would be a poor idea, is because financial reasons, and $75 or X amount means something to one person and not to another. The W was considered, and this is mainly because faculty have spoken to counterparts at other peer institutions and have seen that Ws are instated for those institutions, so that's how they kind of came up with, okay, this is another solution. They did see that from the survey results, the open responses, Ws were not wanted all around, and they definitely did take that into consideration. I'm trying to think, those were the three main ones.
So with some of the solutions that were like thrown around today,
These were not
it would
discussed.
be like new and
Right, exactly. The more than 4 late drops was discussed, but I think what they were thinking was, well, if we resemble it to the pass-fail system, then it's consistent. But that's not to say that you shouldn't propose that. Like, I think that's still up.
Right.
I'm still really confused as to what problem we're looking for a solution for. And I think that's been a problem throughout this whole discussion, because it gets back to, well, you know, there's too many people in these classes, and some of them we think are going to drop them for silly reasons. So are we looking to fix the whole registration system? Are we looking to disincentivize students who are dropping the course for a particular reason? Or what? Because that determines the scope of the solution that is appropriate for the problem. And I think we really need to decide whether, if we want to talk about a solution to all our registration problems, I think that we need to discard the drop issue entirely, because a solution to all our registration problems and a solution to just the 44% of students who are saying that they can't get into the classes they want or need, that's not going to be fixed by changing the mechanism for dropping courses. And I think that's kind of the underlying point of this discussion and the opposition to this proposal, is that it doesn't address the registration issue. If we're looking to fix the fact that some people register for more classes than they actually ever intend to take, and as a result are preventing people from who actually need or really want a particular class from getting it, then maybe we can look at the drop issue. But we need to decide which of those issues we're trying to deal with here.
Okay, we'll take like 3 more, so I think 3 people can answer it. Let's start with TJ.
So I don't think it's going to be like really productive right now, throwing around opinions about whether this is a problem or not. So maybe we can kind of wait until we get the registrar's data and kind of bring this discussion back when we have like real hard facts.
And I think it's really important that we look at this in a broader campus dialogue. So especially this year, this broader message of exploration and project wings, and as a PA, we really push this message of being able to take classes that you don't think you might love, and putting this incentive for people not to take those kind of classes and be scared of taking them past week 2, I think really does the student body a disservice, especially when we're moving towards this era of trying things that you might be uncomfortable with. So I think really looking at it in a broader campus dialogue is really important.
Finally, Andrew.
I think TJ's point was good, so I'm going to hold my own.
Great. I think so that we'll close the floor for discussion with respect to time. So coming out of this discussion, I think what's clear is that the student body obviously does not want this specific proposal, and I can vigorously communicate that to faculty, senate, and the CUC. There were some good suggestions coming out of this as well, and those can also be passed on. This piece of legislation will be voted on in 2 weeks. In the meantime, there can be any type of additions or new legislation introduced, but we'll be talking about this more in 2 weeks. And I'm really envisioning that perhaps we can have more discussion, more campus-wide dialogue, looking at some more facts, and perhaps getting in some members of the CUC, some members of the faculty who really have a better perspective on some of the issues and some of the problems, so that can be more defined. But with that said, we'll move on to our next agenda topic, which is Rally Club, I believe. Sorry. So we're actually The next discussion topic, wow, so we skipped this. So we'll jump back up to 5, but one meeting discussion topic that I just wanted to bring up is that instead of the bi-weekly meetings that we've been having over the last semester, we're moving back to weekly meetings, and I communicated this in an email to the voting members of Senate. It's really twofold. One of them is, our Constitution just doesn't allow us to do this. To pass the bi-weekly meetings, we really need to pass a constitutional amendment. And so I'm more than happy to send that out to pursue that. It was a piece of legislation that was voted on by Senate. But going on to the second point, I think there's a lot of different topics of discussion, issues that are coming up this year that really warrant more time for student discussion and consensus, and bringing that to administration. So I really think if we were to meet bi-weekly, we would have to cut out quality discussion and quality, really time to come to different consensuses over the next semester. So with that being said, if there's like 2 or 3 thoughts on that, feel free to communicate your opinion on that to me via email. As I said, I'm more than happy to start the campus-wide kind of like referendum on that. But honestly, it's a pretty complex process, and we need a pretty big turnout of the student body, so I'm not that optimistic that would eventually pass. But any thoughts?
I would just point to the fact that it's currently 8:50, and this is kind of a weekly schedule of content, and that I think when we were having the bi-weekly meetings, they were running longer than this body has traditionally met, and potentially slowing down our ability to really discuss issues in depth and deal with the current issues on campus on a weekly basis.
Would there be any potential discussion of still keeping them every week, but changing perhaps the time or day of the meetings, or would they definitely be Wednesdays at 8?
Yeah, so I'm more than happy to look at that. There are some issues of it's hard to find meeting spaces because a lot of recurring reservations going at the beginning of the year, and it's going to be hard. So that's why I had to meet in the library last week, because there was recurring salsa. So people were dancing here instead of the essay meeting. But we can certainly look at that. Right now we have a standing reservation for this space for this time for the rest of the semester. Great. Well, feel free to send me your opinions, but I think based on kind of that feedback, we're going to go ahead and stick with meeting weekly unless I get them on emails tomorrow. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next discussion item. Actually, the last discussion item, which is Rally Club. So over the past, past summer, so this really stems out of discussions that came through the athletics University Standing Committee. So Alan Parkins created a subcommittee out of that committee, along with Rick Schell, who was the faculty sponsor of that committee. Rick Schell and Alan kind of started looking at student involvement, student support of varsity athletics, and they talked to a lot of people. They went through a lot of different findings, but they really came to the conclusion that Rally Club, this organization that existed at Rice in the past, bringing that back would really do great things for student support and student engagement in varsity athletics across campus. So over summer, we've been working with a number of different students. As the college presidents, we've been talking about this a lot over the past 2 or 6 weeks. And we're really excited about starting to put together Rally Club, a campus-wide organization that's really going to put on exciting programming around varsity athletics and engage and encourage students to attend. And so James has been kind of coordinating some of these efforts, and I was going to give him around 2 to 3 minutes to talk about what's going on, what really the vision for Rally Club is over the coming semester. And then we'll have time for some short discussion before we adjourn the meeting.
All right, I'm James Kittleman. I'm a junior at Duncan, and as Robbie mentioned, I've been working on this for a couple months or so. Basically, the point of Rally Club is to increase school spirit, and the way that we're going to do that is by promoting athletic events and by kind of revamping the atmosphere at games. In the past, we haven't really had a big showing at many events besides a football game or 2, really that's it. We're going to kind of look at every single sport, well, within reason. I don't know how many people will go to golf, but we're going to look at football, soccer, volleyball, basketball, and we're going to try to create events that students would be excited about going to, and that would kind of make the school more united rather than college oriented. One event that we've already thrown, just to give you an idea, is before the soccer game on Sunday, we had a little paint up party where there was face paint and there were also signs to paint. It wasn't very well put out, only people from Duncan and Lovett showed up. But we're working on the organization of the club by getting reps from each college and by putting together a board of people who would be better at planning events than just myself and a few other people I've been working with. Right now there's an application on the SA website if you're interested in trying to join the Rally Club in either the capacity of a board member or a rep. So do that if you can, if you're interested. I think they're open till the 5th, and then we'll be selecting those people. Other things are there is a Facebook page, and the Facebook page will be used to announce events. Really, that's it. And on Saturday, we're having a big event as a watch party for Notre Dame. The Notre Dame game is going to be in pub. Game's at 2:30. Tell all your friends. There will be food provided, but beer will not be provided. I think pub will be selling it, but we will not be funding it. I think that's all I have. Oh, yes?
You said for applications, you can either apply as a board or a rep, and you would select them?
Yes.
Like you would select your college's rep?
No, so that's going to be done in collaboration with the college presidents.
Thanks.
And yeah, so essentially, college presidents will have the final call in that situation.
Just making sure.
I was super confused too.
Yeah, I have absolute power here. Go ahead.
Would the kind of idea behind Rally Club be more about kind of participation, like getting people out to games, or like programming per se, like tailgates or other like things? Just kind of thinking about maybe like funding and stuff along that lines. Do you kind of imagine, you know, maybe we just paint up and show up, or kind of is the idea of Rally Club maybe that Rally Club would sponsor some sort of tailgate or something?
Well, the idea is twofold. The idea is that each of the reps would gather people up from each college and bring them to the game together, and there we would meet and tailgate.
Okay.
In terms of funding, I've started meeting, I met with our sponsor, who's Rick Shelligan, and he's going to help us get funding from alumni, and I'm also going to meet with Suzanne Bowie, something like that, and she is the director of alumni stuff, and we're going to try, our main avenue is going to try to be alumni.
Okay.
So I know in like previous thoughts, like forming Rally Club, there was like point system and then getting gear and stuff. Is that still in play, or is that just kind of boarded on the side?
As of now, we don't have it, but we are going to work this year to get it back. There was a little bit, we ran into trouble with H&D, and the idea was that you could go to a game, you could swipe in, you could swipe out, you could accumulate points, and you could get gear. And we thought that was basically in place. We kind of had to tune things up, but it turns out we didn't have any of that. So we're going to have to work with H&D this year, and we're going to have to work with athletics to see what we can get from them. And hopefully we can put something like that in place for next year. But for sure, right now, that's not.
If I could make a recommendation, I think once you have college reps, it would be beneficial to like have them meet everyone that wants to go to the game in their college and then walk over and meet in a central location, because I don't think people want to walk by themselves and then meet the Rally Club at an event.
Right, that's what we're going to do. Where each college rep will collect people at their college. There might be a North meetup and a South meetup also, and then meet up at games. If that gets too confusing, it might just be directly from each college to each game. Yes.
So I'm curious, from your experience and your research, I think kind of the problem you're solving is low attendance across various sporting events, not just football, various ones.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you view as kind of like the order of roadblocks as to why students do not attend? They don't know when they are, they don't have the time, they don't think that it's worth their time to go, and an event might solve that. What do you think kind of the priorities of roadblocks are?
I think the biggest roadblock is that there's this thought that no one goes to things, and you're way less likely to go to something if you think you're going to be the only person there, especially if that turns out to be true one time, you're not going to do it the next time. So the point of Rally Club is to shift that idea of thought, where there will be people at every game, and even if you can't make them all, you know that there's going to be this solid group of people who will always be there. Someone from your college, one of your friends is going to be there. So if you want to, here's how you can go to the games, here's what you can do with the games, and then we're going to slowly but surely kind of change the Rice mindset of being kind of an academics only school to being academics who also enjoys the occasional sporting event. Did you have?
Yeah, so are you, as a rally club, are you gonna be like really pushing like every single game of every sport of every, like for every season?
No, what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk to coaches and see like kind of the order of which games they think are gonna be most important. So we're not, if we push every game, I think people are gonna get rally clubbed out. But I think if we can get, you know, like the football coach says these, well, I think football, since there's so few home games, we can probably push all those, but like basketball, they can say these are our big conference opponents, or this is kind of an exciting game, or we're planning on pushing the soccer game against Vanderbilt next week because it's, you know, SCC game, those kind of things. But we're not going to try to push everyone because that's just unrealistic.
Could we possibly make one of the main focus be more soccer shirts? Because all I've wanted in my 4 years at Rice is a soccer shirt, and I never win one.
All right, we'll work on that.
Thank you. That's all I want.
So, back to the previous question about why students might not come. I was in NSR as a spirit and training committee, and so we actually, our big project was doing the survey, asking students, and it's like one of our survey questions we felt that a lot of Rice students didn't go to events because they felt they were going to fall behind. And what we found out was like 90% of students that responded said that they felt that their peers studied the same amount or more than they do. And so that might just like kind of indicate, I don't know, because I was at NSR back then, if this survey, like this report was published through Hirsch or whatever, but we have this data, we did a survey. It's not the most cleanest report or survey, but the data is still here, and it does show that it's a lot of academic and just other kind of sort of reasons and a mindset why students don't go. It's not necessarily that they don't feel Rice spirit, it's that they have other commitments going on at their time.
I'm not sure how much we should really take away from the fact that we think people study as much as or more than we do, because that's true for people who think that they don't study at all, and then, you know, other people study some.
Great. All right, thank you, James. So yeah, definitely moving forward, this is going to be a project that's worked on in close collaboration with college presidents and kind of leadership from across the university and the administration and students. Thanks to James for kind of pulling some of this together. Thanks to everyone else who's kind of been helping out in the process. I think that was our last agenda item, so if there aren't any announcements, there are announcements.
So we have flyers for the senators, so if you will come up here, there are flyers for the Hedgehopper program and for the MSR application, so please come see Joe and I before you leave. Just senators. Yeah, just senators.
Also, there's still pizza in the back. Good
So I do have one serious announcement before we finish up. Next week, we'll be spending the majority of the meeting discussing the sexual assault working group and the new sexual assault policy that will be kind of published by that time. Megan has been working really hard over the summer to act as the student representative to that committee, which is incredibly important, not only in the context of Rice, but in the context of nationwide discussions and kind of mandated by the federal government. So that will be a really important kind of time to discuss these issues, talk with administrators, talk about student opinion of the policy. So the policy will be published by that time, and so it'd be really important for everyone to take a glance at it, look at it. It'll be published online. But most importantly, kind of get the word out. I'll be sending out a campus-wide email. We'll also be trying to market it to targeted groups that would have a vested interest and a vested stake in these types of discussions. But please do make an effort to encourage everyone in your college or your friends to come out, because it's a really important discussion to have. But other than that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second. All those in favor?